So, today, May the 9th, 80 years ago today, the day after VE Day. So this is the second of the public holidays. So we have a daily sketch, souvenir edition, and a daily newspaper, the Daily Mirror. So we'll take the Daily Mirror, and we have dense crowds in Whitehall, estimated by the police at 50,000, all cheering like mad, mobbed by the Prime Minister when he emerged from Downing Street after his broadcast speech. With a broad grin of victory on his face and a new cigar clamped between his teeth, Winston Churchill gave the famous V sign. The final total surrender documents were signed by the Germans and the three allies yesterday in Berlin. The Channel Islands were to be freed at once. Hostilities in Europe ended officially at 12:01 a.m. today. And here's the Japanese not looking forward to the Allies coming to get them. And again, you have the normal daily things that goes on. "25,000 German prisoners of war will be put to work immediately on the government's housing programme. They will be used generally in heavy preparatory work, such as clearing sites and digging sewage trenches. No longer will Germans use the Nazi salute. In its last communique of the war, the German High Command said yesterday that the British have forbidden the Wehrmacht to use it, and so now the normal army salute is now made compulsory. First VC since the end of the war is posthumously awarded to Lance Naik Sher Shah of the 16th Punjab Regiment for supreme self-sacrifice in Burma. It is the 23rd VC of the war won by the Indian Army. King Leopold of the Belgians and his wife and family have at last been found by the US 7th Army. All are in good health. In accordance with the expressed desire of the government that workers generally should enjoy a VE holiday, it has been arranged that newspaper workers shall take their holiday today, and accordingly, in common with other London morning newspapers, the Daily Mirror will not be published tomorrow. Publication as usual on Friday. General Eisenhower told the Allied Expeditionary Force yesterday that they had taken in their stride military tasks so difficult so as to be classed by many doubters as impossible. Let us have no part, he told them, in the profitless quarrels in what other men will inevitably engage as to what country, what service won the European war. It was Ike's victory order of the day, and he said that the AF's accomplishment at sea, in the air, on the ground, and in the field of supply had astonished the world. The route you have travelled through hundreds of miles is marked by the graves of your former comrades, he said. No monument of stone, no memorial of whatever magnitude could so well express our respect and veneration for their sacrifice as would perpetuation of the spirit of comradeship in which they died. Huns had to sign in Berlin ruins. Devote VE Day 2, this is the second public holiday, to our Russian comrades, says Premier. At 1 minute after midnight this morning, the war in Europe ended officially. But throughout the day, the ceasefire signals were sounding on the remaining scattered fronts, and the Channel Islands were at last set free. Yesterday, in the ruins of Berlin, the unconditional surrender of the Germans, agreed on at Eisenhower's HQ, was ratified and confirmed. Air Chief Marshal Tedder, Deputy Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, and General Tassigny signed on behalf of General Eisenhower, and Marshal Zhukov on behalf of the Soviet High Command. The German representatives were Field Marshal Keitel, Chief of the High Command, and the Commanders-in-Chief of the German Army, Navy and Air Forces. The Prime Minister, in his broadcast to the nation at 3 p.m. yesterday, suggested that on that day we should think mostly of ourselves, but he urged that on the second VE holiday today, we should pay a particular tribute to our Russian comrades in the field, whose prowess in the field has been one of the grand contributions to the general victory. The Premier, who spoke after luncheon with the King and Queen, gave a solemn warning to those Germans still resisting. Should they continue to do so after midnight, they will of course deprive themselves of the protection of the laws of war and will be attacked. We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing, but let us not forget for a moment the toll and efforts that lie ahead. Japan, with all her treachery and greed, remains unsubdued. A second attempt by the Czechs to negotiate the surrender of the German forces announced last night by Prague Radio called a halt to the last demonstration of German barbarism. The Huns yesterday shelled general hospitals in Prague and its suburbs, and even the rescue squads working in the ruins. "Send us dive bombers, help us, we beseech you," pleaded Czech patriots in an English language broadcast last night. Then there was a call to the Germans, stop shelling the hospital of the Merciful Sisters by order of the International Red Cross. Prague reported that the Germans were shooting captured Czech officers and that the town of Konopty, 25 miles from Prague, has been burnt down and the people murdered. Fighting spread all over the country, including Moravia. General Patton's 3rd US Army was rolling along the road from Pilsen to Prague yesterday, with its frontline troops under radio silence, unaware of the ceasefire. They may be the last units to know that the war is over. Marshal Stalin issued an order of the day last night, announcing the capture of Olomouc Road and Rail Centre, 120 miles from Prague. The order referred to stiff fighting and said Soviet troops were continuing their offensive. At this time, the people of Russia had not been told of the German surrender. In a second order of the day, Stalin's last night announced the capture of Dresden, last big city in German hands. Himmler and Göring are believed at Schiff to be with Admiral Dönitz's government, which is now carrying on a semblance of official functions in Flensburg. Cecil Inkart, German Commissioner of Holland, has been arrested. And then we have more of the nation celebrating. All day yesterday, the 8th Air Force took its grounded administrative men on a conducted air tour of the Ruhr to show them the damage they had helped to accomplish on Hitler's war industry. They flew under 1,000 feet and made a special point of coming down low over the heads of tens of thousands of prisoners in the cages along the banks of the Rhine. This was the first time most of the ground crews had seen the skeletons of the once great industrial towns on both banks of the Rhine. The 8th Air Force, conducting these first peacetime sky tours, intend to fly all of its admin and ground crews over this charred and blackened area. And then everything German is ours now. Last night, Germany ceased to be an independent state. Everything and everybody passed into the hands of the Allies. Her government, her military leaders, and all her armed forces still at liberty passed legally into the same category as prisoners of war. All German property and all her possessions and credits in foreign countries are automatically transferred to the account of the Central Allied Control Commission. There will therefore be no armistice as in 1918 with stipulated terms. A last all clear wasn't supposed to be part of the official VE celebrations, but a solitary siren wailed in Manchester yesterday shortly after Mr. Churchill's broadcast because the police thought it was an appropriate moment to sound the very last all clear. Folkestone sounded the last all clear on the town sirens too. British troops in Germany celebrated VE Day with bonfires, very lights of a dozen colours and festivities in every mess and billet, from the Weser to the Rhine, from the Rhine to the Elbe, and from the Baltic to Brussels. Last lights blazed from unshuttered windows and headlights were dazzling. There were toasts to those who have fallen and to a lasting peace. There were prayers in stables, in tents, in the fields and in German homes. All British troops in Egypt were given 2 days' leaves. Orders are being given to all U-boats to surface and report to the Allies, but there is to be no relaxation of Britain's coastal blackout yet. Mr. Alexander, First Lord of the Admiralty, told the Commons yesterday that operational experience during the 24 hours up to that time did not permit him to lift the ban. That's the surrender at Reims. And this is the Daily Sketch Souvenir Edition. Monty says, now win the peace. We have won the German war. Now let us now win the peace, said Field Marshal Montgomery in a personal victory message. There we go through. Goes through 6 years, a prayer. And basically it's backtracking through events, because obviously it's a souvenir edition. Yeah. So it's nothing much that hasn't already been in previous newspapers. U-boats ordered to show up. Prague heavily shelled since for SOS. And the weather. Yeah, so that's a nice souvenir edition. So that's the happenings on May the 9th, 1945. 80 years ago today. Bye for now.